figures, please.
Well, they're showing in the so if you have a look at the first table, it shows that we've got an underlying result deficit of 2.6 million, and the favourable variance is 7 million, and then the original budget's 11.806, but then suddenly the revised approved budget is 12.4. So we're going to be going from a deficit of $2 million, as I understand it, to about 12.
Chairman, through you. So the $7 million figure for underlying result, that's the year to date.
Yeah, that's right. I understand.
When we set the budget at the beginning of the year, we were forecasting that the underlying deficit would end at 11.8 million. When we reviewed these figures in the September quarter, we are downgraded that further to 12.471 million.
Yeah.
And what we're saying to you as a result of the December quarter is we're holding reasonably steady against the September quarter. So we're now only at 12.624. So in terms of the underlying deficit that we said we thought we would start the year with was at 11.8. That was the forecast that we put in place when we started this financial year. We've now, at this stage, moved to 12.624.
Okay, so perhaps you could explain. So if you have a look at that first table, it's got year-to-date actual negative 2.6 million. So I'm assuming that's to the 31st of December.
Correct.
And the budget was that by this same time of the 31st of December, we would have been minus 9.63. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep.
Okay. So that means there's a variance of $7 million in the positive. So we're $7 million better off than we were.
Yeah.
And at the 31st of December, we're only $2 million in deficit. But what you're now saying is between the 31st of December and the 30th of June, we expect to lose a further 10 million when we were only $2.6 million down in the first half of the year. And I'm just wondering why we're being so pessimistic, given that we're $7 million better off in the first half of the year. Why are we expecting our result to tumble by $10 million between 31st of December and the 30th of June?
Well, Chairman, I think there's a couple of factors at play there, and I might get Fiona Dixon to jump in and add a bit more to it, our Chief Financial Officer. But you may recall, Chairman, that we budgeted $4.6 million for rate remissions.
Yeah.
As we sit here at the moment, we have just exceeded 600,000, but the estimates, we still included that in the estimates through the end of the financial year. So there's 4 million through you, Chairman, to Alderman Sexton, of that 10 million sitting there just with that. So look, Chairman, it's a combination of smaller factors. That is the largest one. But it's a combination of the whole. It still makes us predict for our modelling that we're going to be closer to 12.6 million than closer to that figure than. So Fiona might be able to take you through in a bit more detail, Chairman, what some of those other figures are. But as I said, 4 million of it relates to rate emissions.
Certainly through you, Chair, we're also being conservative around our anticipated recovery of operations for DCAC, Salamanca and the TTIC. So that's influencing that final number that we're forecasting. If things improve, of course, that will result in a better outcome finally. And once we get to do our March quarter end forecast, we'll perhaps have more confidence about reducing that rates remission number, improving the forecast for those other services.
Okay, well, thank you. My second question is, it's pleasing to note that the forecast is predicting that the Capex budget will be achieved by 30th of June. What percentage of the capital budget was spent to the 31st of December?
I think for you, Chairman, the Chief Financial Officer will have the answer to that question.
She will. She will just need to look it up, Chair.
Take it on notice, Chairman, and then we'll come back to that question.
Okay,
I'll take that on notice and come back. Any other questions, Alderman Sexton?
My final question is that we currently, as I understand it, a pretty healthy cash position of 23 million. And while it's expected to decrease to 13 million, assuming that that $10 million is lost, and I think there's some doubt around that, we're agreeing that probably 4 million of that won't be spent. Why are we expecting to borrow money in June 2021?
I think through you, Chairman, the Chief Financial Officer can answer that question.
Through you, Chair, that would be because we're still basing that forecast borrowing on the current financial forecast to the end of June. As I said, should that improve and we're able to bank the positive variances we're seeing so far, that need will reduce, or at least the quantum may reduce.
Okay, so what you've said in the report is that you're expecting that the healthy cash position of 23 million will reduce by that $10 million to 13 million. That's the worst case scenario, as I'm understanding it from what we've just discussed about the 10 million. But we still have $13 million in the bank on the 30th of June. That's what you're forecasting. So, and yet you've gone on to say in the report that we may need to borrow money in June. And I'm just wondering why we would be borrowing money if we've got $13 million in the bank and that's the worst case scenario.
Through you, Chair, that forecast of the 13 million at the end of June includes the borrowing during June of the 15 million that was approved by Council.
Okay. All right.
And I think, Chair, through you too, we've got to allow, it's a time issue with the payment of the first instalment next year as well. We need to make sure we have enough cash to take us through to the income coming in from the first instalment.
That's me done. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay. Deputy.
Thanks, Chairman. Through you to the General Manager. Could you tell me, do these figures represent the costs associated with any payments to staff for early retirement and packages for any retiring staff in this year to date?
Through you, Chair, yes, I do. The retiring staff that we ran a early assisted voluntary retirement program for back in August, the cost of that will be fully exhausted by the end of this month. So we are part the way through in these 31st of December figures showing those salary reductions. But the full impact of those salary reductions, Chairman, will come through in the 31st of March BBR process, which the committee will consider in May.
Thank you. My second question, Chairman, if I may, is relating to the first dot point after that, that table that Alderman Sexton was referring to. We've had labour costs, cost reductions, mainly because of the impact of COVID. But I just wonder, where are the other areas that we have cut staffing, if we have cut staffing? And a subsequent question is, are we covering all the services adequately that we propose to deliver for the community?
Chairman, I can provide a list of those staff that have exited the organisation to the 31st of December. And I think what that list will show you, Chairman, is that the staff reductions are across the board. There's no one specific area, except for those areas that have been mentioned, where there's been a severe reduction in numbers. Chairman, I don't know about the elected members, but I'm certainly not getting feedback to me that the level of service to the community has reduced. Yes, okay, fair enough. There has been some issues with some services, but look, generally speaking, I'm fairly confident that staff reductions have not led to a significant reduction in the level of service to our community.
Thank you. I'd like to receive that if we may. And my final question is relating to the parking initiatives that we looked at some time ago, and some of those improvements to improve revenue. When are we likely to bring those on board in relation to revenue raising?
Yeah, look, thank you for that, Chairman. The council, you may recall, Chairman, back in September 2019, resolved that there were 9 areas of parking operations they wanted to look at. I think the 3 that the deputy is particularly referring to, Chairman, relate to the 90 minutes free, pension remission, and one or two other areas, early birds, which the council's already looked at. It is my intention that that report on those issues be brought back to this committee in the May round of meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, can we have someone move the recommendation, please? Moved by Alderman Sexton. Anyone voting against the recommendation? There be nothing against the recommendation. The item is carried. Item number 2, Ronald McDonald House, charity parking, Argyle Street. Open for discussion. And Alderman Sexton.
Happy to move that, Chairman. I think that's a sensible option. It means that we're not unnecessarily allocating 7 free parking spaces when they may or they may not be needed. But we are providing heavily subsidised access to car parks for people who genuinely need it at $5 per day, which I think most people would think would be very affordable and reasonable. So I'm very happy to support that motion.
Okay, any further discussion? Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. Look, this has obviously come off the motion, the discussion that myself and Mr. Carr had with the Ronald McDonald House. And I've had a chat to some of the board members about this in the last couple of days about this. They're obviously disappointed, but I think they understand the position and they understand that this, whatever goes forward, it's better to have something sustainable than something that might not last forever. And I think this is sustainable. Can I just ask, the rate of $5 a day to park a car there for the same amount of time for a full day, what would that cost at the commercial rate?
Director.
Through you, Chair, the current daily rate's about $23.
Okay. So it's still a significant discount. I think if we can do something like this that's sustainable, and I imagine that there'd be other organisations that might be equally worthy of this, and we've got a policy to go forward on this. I think it's a good thing. So I'll just note what we've contributed to the Ronald McDonald House so far, and I'm sure we'll hear from them in the coming week if they've got any other uncertainties or issues with this between now and council. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I always felt that this was worthy of consideration for other organisations. So I'm very pleased, as is, to follow what Alderman Sexton has said, that it's far better arrangement that other organisations benefit from this as well.
Thank you. It's moved by Alderman Sexton. Anyone against? No one against. Items carried. Next item is policy for lobbyists and developers. I open the item for discussion. Deputy.
Yeah, I'm happy to move it, and I'm just wondering. So it's likely to go to the Legat general meeting in. Is that the next one coming up, or when would it go? General Manager.
Chairman, just a couple of things to say. I did speak to Dion Lester informing this motion. He is aware that this might be coming forward from the council. The next LGAT general meeting is in early March. Given this likely to go through council on the 22nd of February, it might be slightly tight. So that after that, Chairman, the next meeting is May. So one of those two, though, Chairman.
Thank you. Look, I'd like to speak at the moment. I might assist in discussion. I'm not totally convinced in the manner in this the recommendation is. I agree with point 1, and I believe that we should be actually first step, rather than going to ALGAT, is first step writing to the minister to get and asking the minister to give consideration to adopt a statewide approach to a policy of this nature. At the end of the day, if it's legislated, it's a far easier way of making sure that it is law. A policy is not law. So, irrespective of what council policy may or may not be, unless it's governed by legislation, it's only a council policy. So I think our first step is not he's not going down this track, is I believe we should endorse one and have a two at this point in time to write to the Minister's office or the Minister's office seeking the Minister to pursue a policy statewide. That's my view. Deputy, I know you want to speak. You can speak now. Oh, sorry, Alderman Thomas, then Deputy.
Yes, look, thanks, Chair. Look, you've made, I think, a valid point. I'm just noticing in the report itself, it talks about the draft bill coming up for consultation. So I agree with you that we should go, as a capital city, we should go directly to government and attempt to have it put into the draft bill for consultation. Much quicker process than what's put forward.
Well, I can't move it, Alderman Thomas. Someone else will have to, but I will just leave debate at this point in time. And someone can move. Deputy.
Chairman, I'm happy to have that as part of, the first line, but to continue with the policy side of things as well. So, we can write the Minister.
Look, Deputy.
Well, why did I?
Sorry to debate this with you, but I totally disagree. I think a policy has got no teeth at all. The legislation overrides any policy. So any other discussion? Alderman Thomas, do you want to move anything? Alderman Barakis wants to say something, and then Alderman Thomas, what are you going to move?
I'll move the motion as it is, but I'll swap. I think we I think we swap number 2 for appropriately worded approach to government based on your commentary earlier on, and that way it gets advanced pretty quickly, including that the government be asked to include it in the consultation document that goes out wide for circulation.
Okay, the minute taker understand that. Basically what it's saying is 1 remains as it is, 2 is that we write to the Minister's office in regards to adopting a statewide policy through the consultation process. Everyone got that? That's fine. Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. 1.1 in the report notes the motion that passed council on the 24th of August, and I remember from the discussion the original motion had talk of a contact register as well as registration of lobbyists and developers. And from memory, the contact register was taken off the motion, and that does line up with what's quoted as the motion in 1.1. The recommendation seems to come back to a lobbyist contact rather than just a register of lobbyists. It seems the recommendation seems to be addressing what the original motion was, not the motion that actually passed council.
Mr. Short.
General Manager, Chair.
Look, General Manager.
Chairman, I think we're all saying the same thing. As officers,
I think there's a difference between a register of lobbyists and a contact register for aldermen to register when they've spoken to lobbyists, to lobbyists and developers.
Well, I think, look, I'd take that point through you, Chairman. What we are saying, though, at the end of the day, I think we're all saying the same thing, that there needs to be a statewide approach and it needs to be included in legislation so there's commonality across all councils. So what I'm saying, look, I agree with the comments you've made, Chairman. I think it's better in legislation than it is in policy, and I totally support that view. In terms of what Alderman Barakis raised, I think all we're saying, Alderman Barakis, rather than getting into the nuances of what the legislation might say, is that we need to have a common approach that needs to be embedded in legislation. And then part 3 is picking up the fact that we will come back to you once we've had a chat to the government about what the legislation might look like.
Look, I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'd be reading if the recommendation was to be in line with the report as per 1.1. That it should be that council endorse a holistic statewide approach to the registration of lobbyists and developers, rather than lobbyist contact with Tasmanian elected representatives. That's very specific, and that was what was taken off the motion last year. I don't think the two are the same thing.
Your point is taken. I'm going to go through to Alderman Thomas if he's comfortable in amending it in that way. I actually tend to agree with you, actually, Alderman Barakis. Once you've mentioned it there, because at the end of the day, the government will legislate accordingly anyway. So if Alderman Thomas is happy to accept that minor amendment, that amendment to you are. So that's been accepted in. Alderman Thomas is moving it in that way. So hopefully everyone is clear. I'll put the, as any, Deputy.
Can I hear that?
Okay, so the council endorsed a holistic statewide approach to the registration of lobbyists and developers. That's correct, Alderman Barkas, right? And that the Hobart City Council write to the Minister's Office in regards to developing a statewide legislation in accordance with the current draft amendments. And then part 3 remain as it is. Now, everyone comfortable with the way I've interpreted what is being said, other than the minute taker to say otherwise? So everyone's comfortable? That's fine. Anyone against the motion that has been put by Alderman Thomas? No one is against. The items carried unanimously by committee. Thank you very much. Right, procurement. Sorry?
Chairman, it was an amendment. I put the motion. I moved the motion. It was an amendment to change the motion.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I took it that Alderman Thomas moved the motion. I'll reconfirm. The amendment is carried. Now I'll put a substantive motion. I'll put the substantive motion. Who is against the substantive motion? Because the amendment was carried unanimously. No one against? No one against. It's a substantive motion is now substantive. Okay, we're all happy? Good. Procurement quotation exemption report. Who would like to move that? Deputy, any discussion? No discussion. The item is carried. I'll move the item. No one against? Be no one against. The item is carried unanimously. Now we go to, just let me get my spot. 6.4. Grants and benefits, 6.5. Anyone like to move that? The recommendation, Alderman Sexton. No questions. Anyone against? I'll put Alderman Barkas. Is that are you playing with your screen or not? You're good.
I was just playing with the screen. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Anyone against the item? No one against. Items carried unanimously. We go now to the supplementary, which is, sorry, I've lost my track.
Yeah,
the supplementary item, until I get it, anyone, there it is. Okay, the Tasmanian Boxing Room request for community rate hire City Hall. I open the item for discussion, or someone wants to move the recommendation. It's open. Alderman Thomas.
Look, I'm tended to be more sympathetic to the association here, provided I can be comforted that the amount they are intending to charge is essentially similar to a break even for the costs involved. I mean, at the moment, anybody is prepared to put on activity that will get a large crowd, get a COVID okay crowd, and provide a diverse set of entertainment for the city, I think should be supported. But as I say, I appreciate that the policy is heavily weighted towards if there's a profit, an excessive profit as opposed to costs, that we charge a standard commercial rate. So I'd ask that question to the appropriate person, Chair, see whether or not we can ascertain what the real cost of, whether or not this is a reasonable price that's proposed to be charged to the community.
Mr. Short or General Manager, or the appropriate officer that can answer and give us an answer here.
Chairman, I don't think necessarily officers have turned their mind to that question that was raised by Alderman Thomas. What the officers have turned their mind to is the nature of the event, and the event is selling tickets. So We haven't necessarily turned our mind towards whether or not it's a break-even event or anything. It's simply that the differential between the two rates is that someone can just walk in off the street. That's been the community rate, so to speak, like an antique show and things like that. So where there's been tickets sold, we haven't turned our mind to whether it breaks even or not. It's just the mere fact that tickets are being sold.
Do you mind if I ask you a supplementary question based on what Alderman Thomas has said? This organisation, is it a not-for-profit registered organisation or not? Can someone answer that one there?
Chairman, I don't think the organisation is registered with the tax office for DGR and those sorts of issues, but the constitution is clearly a not-for-profit, but I don't think it's registered for.
Okay, but its constitution is based under a not-for-profit organisation rather than the commercial organisation. Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know for the moment. Thank you. Any other discussion? Ms. Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. I was approached by the Pro-Am Boxing League last week, and we had quite a long chat about this. They are effectively, and the way that they operate isn't so much as a commercial entity or commercial promotion like some of those big boxing or UFC sort of organisations that makes billions of dollars. They effectively operate, as my understanding is, to put on. It's almost like a football club or a football league locally to put on local fights for local athletes. But what they've managed to have done, as they told me, was secure a world title fight, as is listed in the motion for a female title fight. And I think, as was said by Alderman Thomas, the fee charges is effectively to cover the costs, and there are increased costs as well because of all the COVID restrictions and hoops and stuff that need to be jumped through. And my understanding was they're expecting to come out at a loss, not as a profit. And these tickets are effectively just trying to cover as much of those costs as possible. But I think further to that, and I think perhaps if we can't go the full community rate, I'm sure there could be some sort of negotiation or some sort of compromise, because I think especially given the nature of the fact that it's a world female title fight, it's going to be happening in Hobart. This will be something that will be of greatly followed and of great interest, not just to those that attend the event physically, but to those that watch the event wherever it's televised or streamed nationally or internationally. So I think there's an opportunity for us to say, look, if you put, supported by the City of Hobart or whatever on the bottom of your promotion posters, and then promote that as being supported by the City of Hobart, it would be of as much of a benefit to the city as when we do the same thing with tennis or other events. So I'm sure that it would be. I don't think it would be unreasonable or unbeneficial or not beneficial for us to enter into some sort of conversation with them and negotiate something, because I think it could be of a great benefit to the city. So I'll leave it there. I'm not a voting member in the committee tonight, but I'll just put that suggestion there.
I'll ask a question. Actually, you actually made a point. If this was one of our football clubs, this is a sporting club, seeking to run an event that's ticketed, I don't know, like an indoor football game, just a question, would they be considered in the same light or not if they were charging tickets, similar light to the clubs we provide our grounds and everything like that? I know they're under lease, but I think Alderman Barakis has made a point about, similar to a football club. Would this, General Manager, would this be similar to a football club? It is a sporting club. So put the...
Well, look, Chairman, I think the way that I've answered the question is that we approach it through looking at the nature of the event. So if the event is ostensibly a commercial event, i.e. selling tickets, then we charge the commercial rate. If it's a free entry or a community event, general community event, then we'd apply the community rate. That's always been the rule of thumb that we as officers have applied for many years. So I don't think we look at the organisation per se. We look more at the event and what the event is actually, how the event is being run. So if that helps.
Thank you. Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, look, I think that's a cogent way to approach it, General Manager. It's just that in reality, unless there's a heavy sponsorship by someone, the idea of you'd be expected to make a donation, and by the way, that donation will be $50. I mean, are we in a different situation now where we should be looking at a review of the policy to the extent that a case like this may come again, or is likely to come again, where we can show quite clearly it's a costed to the extent of being at least not a loss making, but it's not there with any profit motive, because there are always going to be costs, and unless a community organisation is sponsored by someone, no event would ever be held because individuals on the committee, etc., would have to pay for it. I'm just saying maybe it's a case where an exception can be made for this one, but a review of the policy be made by officers and a recommendation to council for the future.
Look, Chairman, there is an outstanding council decision to look at the commercial hire rates for our halls, and that's coming back to your committee soon, Chairman. If you were attracted to this reduced rate, then my suggestion would be that you apply the commercial rate so we don't create a precedent, but delegate to me to appropriately discount that rate on the basis of any advertising or commercial benefits there might be to the council as providing the venue. That way then you're not in any way diluting the existing policy, but there may well be a contra benefit to the council through recognition on the program as sponsorship. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Look, that could be the best compromise here. Was that your hand up, Councillor Coates?
Yes. Yeah.
Councillor Coates and then Alderman Thomas.
Look, I think I back up the comments that were just made. Look, as you read through this report, obviously the policy was put in place in 2014. I think for all the right reasons. I think that management have done this well and put forward what their criteria is, i.e. if it's a ticketed event, it's treated commercially. If not, it's not. But, the reason why people could apply to this committee to have things looked at is because, as we know, there's always circumstances outside people's control. In this instance, I'm looking at fundamentally it's a 50% rate. I think 5,800 down to 2,000 and something. But the point's been made that they're going to have to do this in a COVID safe way. So, even if it was commercial operator ticketed event, because of the crowd restrictions, they're only going to be able to sell half as many tickets. And in this case, I sort of view it as, in some ways, we have a landlord. And like we know, when you've had in the commercial sector, businesses whose turnover has been down, well, they come to an agreement with a landowner, with a landlord, so that the activity can carry on, albeit knowing that it's being impacted by COVID. So, I mean, with that in mind, the big bit of data that's not in the report, and my question is, and keeping in mind this is only a month away, but if we weren't to rent it out to this group for those days in March, what is the likelihood that we'll actually get any sort of commercial return from Town Hall for that week?
Can we get an answer?
No. Look, I don't think we've got any idea, Chairman. We would have to look at the bookings and see if there's anyone penciled in for that date, if there's a cancellation. But we could take that on notice, but if you like. But I can't answer it, honestly.
I think in some ways the absence in a report to me would indicate, we're better off to have this event at the non-commercial rate than we are to not have it at all, because I think that's still a better outcome for Hobart ratepayers.
Alderman Thomas.
Only if Councillor Coates, are you finished?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Well, look, I'm prepared to move a motion based on the recommendation of the General Manager that he'll take this meeting's outcome in consideration when he's looking at an appropriate grant, but we charge the full fee up front so that we don't destroy the policy at this point. But the policy will be part of the review that's coming back to us.
Could I ask, rather than the word grant, that the general manager negotiate a sponsorship deal with this organisation? So I think that's the best words to use here.
Look, that's fine. I'd just like to make sure it's not.
We have Councillor Alderman, the deputy's left us at the moment. So,
Chair, the only concern, I'm very comfortable with that, and I'm happy to move it that we support a community event. There may be some issues if we're seen as supporting boxing per se. So I'd just like to see it as that council supporting a community event as part of a sponsorship rather than supporting boxing.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we've got the motion that's moved by Alderman Thomas. Any other discussion on that?
Chairman, may I just add one point, just
Yes.
to make sure it complies with Section 77 of the Local Government Act. If we're going to charge the commercial rate and then discount it by a sponsorship agreement, then the balance between the two will be shown as a benefit in the annual report.
That's fine. That's correct. Make sure that's added into that. Okay. All that, Deputy.
Sorry, Chairman. So what is the amount that we're providing support?
$2,608.52.
Look, Chairman, just to clarify that, we are, as I understand the resolution, we will be charging $5,800. Sorry, yes, and then appropriately discounted by the value of the sponsorship package that is offered to us, and the balance between the two will be shown in the annual report, Chairman.
And that's delegated to the general manager. So that figure is not correct that I just gave you. Sorry. Okay. Any other discussion? No, Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I think that's a better way of going about it. I think that was put by the general manager, rather than us trying to justify whether this is or isn't, or try and beat around the bush as to whether it is or isn't a community event. We just take it as it is and try and negotiate away. But I think this is something that would be definitely beneficial for us to get a decent advertising position on this, because I think that's definitely a large interest in events like this. And I'd respectfully note to Alderman Thomas, I wouldn't say that there's anything inherently negative about sponsoring a appropriately sanctioned boxing event. I think they deserve, I think such events and such sports deserve just as much respect as some of the other sports that go around. But I'll leave it there. But I'd hope that we do get a good result on this.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put the item. Who's against? There's no one against. The item's carried unanimously. Happy negotiating, General Manager. Right, we go to committee status report. Someone move to receive a note. Moved by the Deputy. Anyone against? No one against. Item's carried. Responses to questions without notice. Can someone move to receive a note, please? Moved by Alderman Thomas. Anyone got any points to make? No. Alderman Sexton. Sorry.
No, sorry, Chairman. I've just got one question without notice, so not on this item.
Oh yeah, it's okay. I'll just get responses first, and I'll get you the next one.
Yep.
Okay. No one against this item. No one against this item. On questions without notice, Alderman Sexton, you've got a question without notice.
Yes, my question is, can council officers provide to elected members a table of rates collected by suburb and capital works expenditure by suburb?
Can you take that on notice, General Manager?
The short answer is yes, but I'll take it on notice, Chairman.
Thank you very much. It's on notice. Okay, any other questions on notice? Without notice? No other questions?
I've got a question.
Sorry?
Oh, I've got a
Sorry, Councillor Coates, I missed you there. You've got the floor.
Through you to the general manager or whoever. I guess my question is around debt profile and maturities. Is it possible for the elected members to be provided with the total debt facilities the City of Hobart has and their maturities and interest rates?
The short answer to that question is yes, Chairman, and I'll provide that on notice.
Thank you. So I'll put the questions on notice to received and noted. Anyone against? No one against. Items carried. Someone move to go into close, please. Moved by the Deputy. Anyone against?